Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to accepting a contract to work with a company that's notorious for shutting down programs when they're even slightly failing. Then that company shutting down the program you're on when the program you're on slightly failed. Mixer. What? You! Yes, you! I see you out there using your Gram Primes and Galatines and whatever other weapon is the in thing right now. And I'm gonna tell you kindly, young man, woman, and or other gender association, why are you using that? When you could be using any one of these! This video today is all about underrated melee weapons, if you could not tell by my showreel of weapons that I use personally. I can imagine you're probably used to games that tell you there's a meta, or you have to use this weapon to be the best, or you gotta enchant it with this or that to be the most optimal. And taking the Warframe being all like, well, Gram Prime statistically has the highest base damage, so clearly that's the best. Well, what if I were to tell you that in Warframe there is no wrong decision? What if I were to tell you that in Warframe you can use whatever the hell you so choose and it's fine? What if I told you that that weapon that you thought was absolutely the worst thing on the planet could possibly be the best thing in the game if you gave it a chance? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, power scaling and general weapon semantics mixed with the fact that the game has no defined endgame or difficulty once you reach a certain point really lends itself to the credence that the fact that when it comes to choosing weapons in this game, the world is kind of your oyster. This having been made all the more apparent with Melee 3.0. That update then lowered the damage ceiling, making it harder for you to infinitely scale your damage, which a lot of people weren't happy about. But it also then raised the base foundation of melee damage. Adding to that things like range now scale infinitely better with smaller weapons and how much quicker you can build your damage to meet the lowered power ceiling with the new combo multiplier system really lends it to the idea that you can literally pick up any weapon and power through the entire game at any level with any weapon. So in this new series, I'm going to be demonstrating weapons that I believe are not represented enough in the game, in an attempt to debut weapons for your hungry eyes to view upon, and maybe tempt you in trying some of them out yourself. Because let's face it, Warframe is all about playstyle, and the weapons and frames you choose are the crux of those playstyles. The potency therein is all down to your modding. So because of that, you should always be realistically choosing weapons and frames that fit your playstyle of your preference, unless you're that 0.1% of the player base that pushes for the extreme hardcore content like infinite survivals and whatnot. But without getting into too much of a tangent about game difficulty and the changes in that difficulty over the years, let's TLDR this whole video. I'm going to show you weapons that you probably thought were terrible but are in fact amazing. And in a complete change of character, I'm actually going to show you some builds for them too. Shocker, I know. As a quick disclaimer, this is not a tier list. I mean, we all saw how well that went when I tried to satirically make a frame tier list. Spoiler, tier lists are pointless. Everything in this video is personal preference. Just because it's something I like or use or build for doesn't mean it's gospel. This is why I don't make build videos. Use what you want to, not what other people. And that's got a bit rambly, didn't it? Anyway, on with the video. Starting this list off with the first weapon, which you might not have expected to be good, is the Fang and Fang Prime. Since Melee 3.0, this weapon has gone from being one of the most laughed at novelty weapons in the game to a weapon that can legitimately hit so hard it makes even Atlas's punches seem like marshmallows. Mostly aided by the increase in raw base damage from Melee 3.0 and the scaling of ranged mods, the Fang can now shred enemies of any level, even with subpar modding. The only thing that's worth mentioning is that it's definitely worth getting some range in there, whether that be through a reach mod or from your Riven, possibly. You can benefit from the fact that smaller weapons now scale exceptionally better than bigger weapons with range, and that's a certainty. The other great thing about the Fang is that it's very versatile, sporting a handy 26% status chance and then 26% crit chance with the 2.6 times multiplier on the Prime variant. Now, you want to mod for whatever you so choose with that versatility in mind. For simplicity and ease of damage, go pure crit, as pure crit is just raw numbers. If you know a bit about status, then slap on an element and go from there. For something more interesting, you can try and go for a hybrid build if you feel a bit more savvy with your weapon builds. As the Fang does excel, you'll have to push for things like Weeping Wounds, Blood Rush, and maybe some baseline mods as well to help it go further than that. Weapon number 2 is the Sideon and Vacor Sideon. Ever felt like being Poseidon or some mythological creature? Well, this is probably one of those weapons you've not heard all too much of, but I can assure you when I say this, but the Sideon and its Syndicate variant companion are inherently great weapons, boasting a lovely 2.9 range and a cozy 25% crit chance, and being available from Master Rank 5, you can really start to see why I like this weapon. When it comes to any weapon that has a Syndicate or Prime version, usually your best bet is to build the base version first. See if you like it and then go for the side-graded Syndicate version or the minor improvement of a Prime iteration. The Syndicate version in this instance, however, is actually a direct upgrade to the base version. And although the base version focuses more towards status and that's it, the Vacor Sideon becomes a hybrid machine, with 33% status, 21% crit, and a 2.5 crit modifier. Build for what you want with this, honestly, but if I were to be complete up in front of you, I would prefer going for a rather prompt crit build on this bad boy. Although that might just be because of the Riven I have, and I suppose that's something to keep in mind with any of the weapons here. A lot of the time, what you build for will be influenced by your choice of Riven. Weapon number 3 on the list is the Heliocore and the Cyanoid Heliocore. Now, the base Heliocore is a little bit of a bitch to get, as you have to... And it probably then lends itself as to why so many people use this weapon, as it's obtainable from the Reputation vendor with Samaris for the base variant, or the Cyanoid version then comes from the Cephalon Suda Syndicate rep. Also, the fact that the base version then requires Master Rank 9 and the Syndicate version then requiring Master Rank 11, yeah, it's probably a good reason why you don't see too many people using this. So I'm going to get straight into it with these two. They're amazing. They're annoying to get, but they're amazing. The regular Heliocore boasts a massive crit ratio, making it great for just getting in and walloping enemies. Although it's inherently quite slow, that crit chance will then allow you to make use of things like Berserker. And then the Cyanoid version pulls a complete 180 in and is a pure status beast. So pick your poison and build appropriately. The thing that really helps push this weapon above a lot of others is the fact that it scans enemies upon killing them. So if you've been struggling getting those Kavat genetic codes from the Orokin Derelict, or trying to fill up your codex, this weapon is going to be your next best friend. Weapon number 4 is the Karudo. Sorry, it sounded like Kuva. It's funny how little I see people using fist weapons. I mean, who doesn't like a good fisting? Maybe it's just the innate tiny range they have that's a bit off-putting, but realizing that most fist weapons come with an innate crowd control through baseline knockbacks or using heavy attacks to knock enemies up in the air, it's often realizing that fist weapons, if not for being powerful, are just immensely fun to use. Although they have a trade-off of being very short in their range, I mean, how else am I going to insert a JoJo meme into this? Now, although the Karudo itself, in terms of obtaining it, is a little bit of a pain in the ass in the fact you get it from the thumpers on the plains of Eidolon, it, as a weapon, is generally built for crit and a bit of range. With that in mind, it will easily help you do your best impression of Jet Li punching and kicking your way through hordes of enemies. And where it may lack in range, it more than makes up for that in its raw, unbelievable damage and knockback. So relying on jumping balls deep into the enemy lines will reward you with a visceral and satisfying body count. Number 5 are the Dual Cleavers and their Prisma variant. The Dual Cleavers are not only a low master rank weapon, but they're a simple one that don't seem to get the love they deserve. Usually people pick them up and throw them away within seconds. They're fast, they're hard-hitting, and crit-based cleavers. I mean, it's as simple as that when you think about it. If you pick up their base version and like their functionality, you can then upgrade them to their Prisma variant, which usually comes from Barakatia, which then excels the base version to an all-new height. Crit will always work well with both variants. A little bit of a range going in there as well wouldn't go amiss either. But honestly, with how fast they attack, the time between attacks means you'll close gaps easily enough, and then utilizing things like condition overload even works very well indeed. Now, these weapons are a kind of pick an element, pick the raw base damage, and go nuts with them essentially. And I can personally recommend, if you're looking for a satisfying weapon that makes you feel like a maniacal mass murdering maniac, then these are your go-to. I've made some fuss about the Dark Split Sword before, and I'm going to again, so F you all, this is my list and I'll do what I want with it. So the Dark Split Sword is a weapon that I personally adore a lot, for the main reason that it has a very niche gimmick to it. Wherein most weapons only allow you to put one type of stance in them, the Dual Split Sword is... well, a dual split sword. You can combine it together using a two-handed heavy blade. stance mod to turn it into a two-handed blade and then gaining stats based on that, or you can equip a two-handed stance mod to turn it into a two-handed stance weapon. Not only that, but as I iterated to in some way, when you change between the stances, the stat weights of the weapon changes with it. So one mode will keep you into a status form, and then the other mode will keep you into a crit form, allowing you to meet the functionality of your choice. Obviously, if you go with the two-handed stance mod, you're going to be attacking slower, but harder. If you go for the dual mode, you'll be attacking much faster but slightly lighter. My recommendation is to pick your poison and go with the one you so choose. Not to mention this also then comes with such high base stats, it's a lot of fun to use. The only problem with this, which is probably why not many people use it, is that you have a lot of prerequisites to put it together, utilizing two different weapons being constructed together to end up with just one. But it is absolutely worth it. Give it a try, you'll see what I mean. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the pinnacle definition of a hybrid weapon. Although its base damage is moderately low, I never see many people using this, even though the prime variant itself is rather dashing. Now, as far as weapons go, it's not going to win any awards for being the best on the planet, but there's something oddly satisfying about using a weapon that looks like something that drops straight out of World of Warcraft that's oddly appealing to me. So if not for the visceral and visual aesthetic of it, you definitely want to utilize this weapon for how easily adjustable it is to your personal playstyle. And you might be seeing a little bit of a trend here with the weapons I'm suggesting. Usually they're ones that offer personal preference of playstyle. But hey ho, this is Warframe after all. We've all got to try and play what we enjoy, right? The key part to the Pangolin is that it is a slashing beast. Now, when it comes to any impact, puncture, or slash-based weapons, slash is always key. It just statistically is. Slash combining with an element like, I don't know, viral or toxin, for example, will then synergize extremely well. And because you're attacking so fast with such a high innate status chance, you're going to be causing a lot of damage with this thing. It is a little bit more build dependent than a lot of the weapons on this list, but once you get it in the right state, this weapon shreds. And I honestly wish I would see more people using it, because I can't wait for the day where we see a dual Pangolin, if you know what I'm saying, because who doesn't like having two hands full of mighty Anyway, speaking of double entendres, we got a double weapon for number 8 with the dual carries. The dual carries have long been one of my favorite dual weapons in the game. Ever since I got dual Karma Prime as my very first ever Prime weapon, the dual carries was a great substitute therein as a direct improvement over them. They look awesome and they hit like a truck. Now, although they do require a bit of modding to get the most potency out of them, you can have a lot of fun with these, and I'll explain why. By stat weights alone, they are a very large crit weapon. However, with the innate amount of status, although it's not going to win any awards for the amount of status they have, they are going to at the very least allow you to proc a lot of status effects because of how fast you're attacking. So the best way to go with this is to focus a little bit on crit, but then get an element on there such as viral, maybe even blast. Go with whatever floats your boat, because as you're dealing huge amounts of crit chance, you will be getting those lovely little status chances in there as you go. And this is one of the things about faster weapons you should realize. The faster the weapon, the less overall status chance you need to make use of that status chance, because if you're attacking faster, you have more chances of crocking that status. And the dual carries and faster weapons therein, like the dual carries, are a prime example. Get it? Prime. A prime example of a weapon that can utilize status at a lower percentage. Number 9, a weapon that no one really uses, a weapon that you've probably not seen that much of past Master Rank 1. It is Skarner. Yes, that's right, Skarner, you heard me. Do you want to know why? Well, that and dual Skarner, in fact. I'm going to lump both Skarner and the dual Skarner in here for the same reason. And I'm going to tell you why, little Billy. Listen here. The Skarner, although you get it as a default weapon when you start out, allow me to instruct you here. The Skarner is a bread and butter weapon. And the problem that lies with the Skarner is because you get it so early in the game, most people will see it as a weapon that's like, oh, that's just the tutorial weapon. I don't need to use this anymore. So they sell it, without ever giving it a full build. You also have the variant of the Prime variant if you had the Founders Pack, but you also have a Prisma variant of it as well. Now, the great thing about the Skarner is that although it lacks an overall status or crit, it's a fast weapon. It's a slash-based weapon. And overall, the Skarner and the dual Skarner should be worth keeping a hold of. Even if you don't use them initially after you get out of the starting area, you can come back to them once you have more mods and understanding of modding to push them further and excel them above what they ever could have been. I can absolutely tell you from personal experience that I have gone back to the Skarner recently and the dual Skarner and the Skarner Prisma and helped elevate them above what they are. Now, there's several ways you can mod this. You can, in theory, go with crit chance or status type, but something that I found works really well here is loading them up with the 90% status mods and as much raw damage as possible. Having a bit of speed in there is quite nice as well with something like Berserk or Fury, but because they are so innately fast by themselves, you are going to hit like a truck just by loading them up with damage. And what with the fact they're quite high on the disposition, should you get a Riven for them, that will push them even further. And you can take this philosophy to most of the early game weapons. Mark 1 weapons and any of those weapons that you picked up in the early stage and then forgot about because they're so low mastery, being like, grr, they're too low mastery rank for my high standards. Yeah, don't let that put you off. Go back, try them out, see how your later stage modding can actually improve them further. And the last, but not least, weapon for this video in particular, bear in mind there are many other weapons I could have chosen here, and we'll probably lump those into another video later down the line, because at the end of the day, we could probably turn this into 2 videos, because there are so many underutilized weapons. Anyway, getting sidetracked, the 10th weapon on this list is the Aether Reaper. Now, the Aether Reaper is a weapon I enjoy quite a lot for the foundation reason of why I like big, chunky weapons in the early stage. It's low mastery rank, so you can get access to it super early on. It comes with a high amount of base damage and is, for the mastery rank it's obtainable at, one of the weapons that comes with the highest amount of crit chance and status chance for its mastery rank. Getting this in the early stage will actually set you up really nicely, and with how Melee 3.0 has changed, it's not going to be like it used to where it falls off at level 30 only to then deal pittance amounts of damage to your enemy. With Melee 3.0 coming in, this weapon now allows it to be the hybrid beast it's always wanted to. With 20% crit chance and 20% status chance, it is, in essence, one of the weapons that will help you a lot in the early stage. Figure it as how Galatine is treated in the early stage. When you're using weapons in the early stage, you're going to lack mods. So you want to rely on the weapon's innate stats to push you through. This is one of the highest innate stat weapons in the early stage, and should absolutely be something you look at when you're first getting into the game if you want some simplicity with a weapon that doesn't require as much modding. Yes, to excel and elevate this above some other weapons, you are definitely going to need to do some modding. But for the new player trying to get into the game, this weapon feels, looks, and absolutely is a weapon that you should try. And that's the video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry if this is going to seem a little bit choppy. There's construction work going on in my house at the moment, so I've had to cut and chop this up quite a lot because of that. But nonetheless, I hope this video has been interesting. If you have some underrated weapons that are not on this list and you want to give me your suggestions for what weapons you think people should start using more because they need to have some imagination of their own, then please leave a comment down below. I would love to know your opinion. And as always, if you'd like to join us for these videos, I do record them on Twitch so that you can join in and give me your feedback. Please drop by our Twitch channel and pop a follow. Same with Twitter. Drop by the Twitter, pop a follow. There'll be links down below. Check us out. And I will very, very likely make a second version of this because, let's face it, when it comes to underrated weapons in Warframe, there's an infinite number of them. I tell a lie, there's actually a set number of them, but you get my point. We're going to do a video separately for melee, primary, and secondary weapons, and then we'll come back and do second iterations of them later. Hopefully you've liked this video, hopefully you enjoyed my satire, and hopefully you've enjoyed the content. And I will see all of you top hatters in the next video.